What's going on, fishing friends? We are at the final leg of our 3-report trip. Tonight we've gone from the lower Chesapeake Bay down to the Florida Keys, and we are back to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we're going to talk about some snakehead, which, I don't fish snakehead a lot. I'm going to do it more this year, but my internal clock is telling me the lid is about to get blown off. I think snakehead are going to go off the hook this year, and the weather is telling me it's about to get off the hook too. So let's bring in, he's got many nicknames, but we'll stick with the main one right now. What's up, Kambotrout?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I just got off the water myself. It was a sporty day out there on the bay. Yeah,
I bet it was with that wind, bro. I bet
it
was.
And my boat's not real big.
Yep.
So, it handled it, but, and we didn't get skunked.
Hey.
It was kind of a scouting trip, but we didn't get skunked, and we made it back safely. So, and you have had one of those moments where you're getting splashed with water, and it's really windy, and you're like, oh, God, this is kind of cold. And then you're like, wait a second. I'm out in the bay in my boat fishing. It's awesome. It's freaking awesome.
It reminds me of, I don't know, I feel like I should be reading Ernest Hemingway when you talk like that, man. I love, oh, God. Even when it's a struggle out there, even when the conditions suck, there's something magical about being out there, bro. So I feel you.
Yeah. It always blows my mind. And this happens a lot on the bay, but I guess it happens anywhere, where you see you'll see a fleet of boats. And maybe it's just people getting too close together, but you ride up on them, and you'll see people sitting on their boats, like a $200,000 boat, and they're just like, I'm like, bro, you need some perspective or something. Something ain't right.
In their defense, I have worn that face before. I actually wore it this weekend. But I agree with you that we do need that perspective about where we are and how fortunate we are to be out there. But when the fish aren't biting, I've worn that face. I'm just saying, that's all I want to do. I can't condemn them. I've worn that face, man. But I agree with you. Have that perspective about how fortunate you are to be out there.
Well, we'll tease this, that you have a story about a snakehead trip from hell. We're not going to get into it quite yet. But we're going to get to that. Let's quickly do the 2-minute bite, where I think we're going to be talking about snakehead. So we can, I guess, skip the whole what's biting, because it's snakehead, I think, right? Unless you want to do bass or something like that.
Oh, no. Let's hit it. Let's hit the snakes.
Snakehead, and then what's the technique, and what are you using?
Yeah. So the good news is that we are fully into the pre-spawn bite. As I've said it before, my favorite bite of the year. They're building up all that energy, consuming as many calories as they can so they can move into the spawn, develop those eggs, raise them, lay them, guard them, all that jazz. Now, for what to use right now, it's topwater time, man. Especially on the Eastern Shore. It is topwater time. So your topwater frogs out there, you got Infamous Fishing, you have, goodness, like Tactical, you have Tailored, Megalure. There's so many frogs out there made by guys who know what they're doing now. Acor, the list goes on. If I left your name out, nothing against you, it's a long list, right? But the frog game is on right now.
Say High Octane.
High Octane, there's another one there. Thank you.
They make a great frog, but so does Rashawn, Infamous Fishing, man. Mm-hmm. Those frogs are the bomb.
And pretty, so pretty.
So pretty.
But get into the details of where you're going to cast them, right? Right now, those snakehead are moving shallow. And by shallow, I mean super shallow. And if you're not that familiar with snakehead fishing, I'm talking you can find 8 and 10 pound fish in about 6 inches of water. Oh, buddy out there, Corey Brummel, right? Y'all may follow him on various different social media platforms. He just put out a video recently
He's
of
like
where,
13, isn't he?
right?
That kid is crushing it.
He's
He's
at least
high octane pro staff.
Yep.
He's 13, and he makes fishing look easy.
I'm telling you, and he just got one, dragon class fish. I think it was like 30 and a half, 31 inches. And he saw it because it was coming out of its dorsal fin. It was shallow enough in the water where its dorsal fin was coming out of the water. They'll be within 3 to 4 to 5 feet of the shoreline. And when you're out there, you're always going to make sure that if you're fishing an area with a lot of flooded bushes on the shoreline, you got to make sure you're casting to the true shoreline. You're not casting to the water's edge out where the tree line ends. You're casting behind those flooded trees into those back pockets. I always harp on accuracy. This time of year,
About to talk about accuracy. Yeah.
This time of year, casting accuracy, especially with topwater, is going to be key because there's going to be little pockets you have to aim for back there that you have to be able to hit. And not just hit, you're trying to get it back there, kind of present it softly so that when it lands, it doesn't spook the fish. A lot that goes into it. But I want to make one point clear, though. The east side, still a little bit ahead of the west side. On the west side, I think subsurface is still going to, produce a little bit more. But I know guys on the west side catching on top, too. Like there's some big fish getting posted on social media right now. Big fish.
I wanted to talk about accuracy for a second.
Yeah.
But real quick, we do have a prize for question of the night. I threw in some, man, I'm not a snakehead guy. You tell me. Maybe these are too dark. Is there a situation where you'd want to throw like a dark curly frog, power orange?
I do not think that's too dark. No, I really don't. I've thrown, similar colors in multiple different, stains of water, be it clear or tannic or what have you. I would prefer to throw it in the clearer water. Hold it up again. It looks like a really close to kind of a crawfish pattern almost, unless I'm seeing
it. Does, for sure. Yeah.
So snakehead dig on crawfish big time, folks. Big time. So like those kind of crawfish patterns is a great one to use. I would probably throw that in clear water before I throw it anywhere else. But I know guys who would throw that in, stained water in a heartbeat.
I was going to ask if that was more of a clear water thing. But that and I left another one out, a Houdini colored, it's like a gold with red flecks in it.
Yeah.
Straight up paddle tail. So, that's a really versatile paddle tail that you can use for all sorts of things. Infamous Rashawn's saying he's got a prize. Type it in the chat, brother, because if you got a prize, normally I'd be like, I gotta ignore this one because I don't know who this is, but I've seen your stuff. So if you want to throw something in, man, please make the pot richer. But let's talk about casting accuracy, because I've always said pickerel will really reward you for an accurate cast.
Yeah.
And so do snakehead. Can you give some tips to some of our viewers for getting your accuracy honed in? And I think I can tip you off on one of them. What kind of gear you might want to use to make you a more accurate caster.
So I got a few points I can hit y'all with on this one. One is going to be, think about how you're going to be fishing, because you're going to have different casting techniques, whether you're fishing from shore, from a boat, or from a kayak. So whatever casting that you're going to use, like if you're going to be casting from a kayak, that's kind of the position you want to practice from, because there's certain angles that you're going to have to get familiar with. And then you're talking about things like, I was talking to my buddies Butch and Damien over there, our snakehead guides on the Eastern Shore. One thing they like is a short-handled bait caster, because they're doing a lot of underhand flips of the wrist to sling this thing back into cover. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Aside from the angle of casting you're going to go to, if you have a shorter handle, you're able to manipulate that better and make those nice tight casts in there. On that same note, you don't have to necessarily be on the water to practice. If you have a backyard, if you can go to a park, granted, if you can go to a park, you might just be able to go to the water. But I'm saying if you can go somewhere that's not the water and you have that time and space available, set up some targets. Like sometimes it's not even just about where you're going to land it, it's about the small hole you're going to shoot it through, because sometimes you're trying to get it back through cover. So that's something to practice as well. Skip casting. But the point is that you need to practice, because you need that practice, because when you get on the water, you might only have one or two shots at that fish. If you make a bad cast one too many times, it might get wrapped around a branch. It might land too heavily, and that might spook the fish. You might be in the branch jerking it, trying to get it out, and that motion of the branches will scare snakehead off. They're not like I always say, they're not these fearless, bloodthirsty creatures. They are conditioned, from the age of being small fry, to be afraid of threats from above. So if you're putting it into a branch and you see put a lot of motion in that branch, sometimes even a tiny bit of motion in that branch, sometimes your frog just flies through the air, and that's enough to spook a snakehead. So definitely hone your accuracy, definitely practice, and try to make those softer presentations. And we can talk about the dangle cast too if we want to talk about that. That's another one of my favorites.
Throw it over the limb and let it dangle, you mean?
Yeah.
I was going to tell everyone everything that Kambotrout's talking about here, whether it be casting accuracy or particularly why accuracy is so important, you can see on his channel.
Yeah.
Whether he speaks about it directly, or you can see, like, I started when I was watching Kambotrout's channel. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. I'm like, how did he get that thing back in there? And I mean, you've worked on your craft a lot, but like that's why I don't catch as many snakehead as you, because I can't get it between the two limbs all the way back over the log, because that's often where I see you catch fish. It's a tight spot that may be the size of a football that you've got to get under a limb and back about 30 feet, and it's important.
Especially in those waters where they're going to have a lot of pressure, because when they hear boat motors and they hear kayaks going by all the time, they're already working to be back in the shallows just because of their own nature. But then you get even more pressure that pushes them even farther back into that cover from all that noise. So snakehead are very sensitive to noise. On that note, I guess one more tip to throw out there: if you're approaching, be it a fry ball or an area you think there's a snakehead, and you have a pedal drive, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and use your paddle as opposed to your pedal drive to get right nice up and close. Try not to bump into trees, try not to drag your kayak over a bunch of timber or hit rocks. Those loud noises will kill your chances of catching those fish. But yeah, hone your skills on accuracy. Practice, practice, practice.
You just gave me a TFC Plus bite that everyone watching got for free. Lady C's asking a question. She says, do you recommend practicing with different lures? Weights vary. I know it can throw me off depending on weight.
That's a really good question, because it's even as much as maybe about the lure, you're also talking about the action of the rod tip, whether it's extra fast, medium. That's going to have an effect. The type of line you're using and line diameter, whether it's 20, 30, 40, or 50-pound test. All of these things. So it's like you might be dialed in with one rod and reel set, and you're hitting the mark every time. You're making your casts. And then you pick up another rod with a different lure, different reel, different action, and you have to kind of recalibrate yourself to what you're using at that given time. So yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Yeah, you definitely want to practice all those different lures, all those different rigs, so you can get used to them. It's like a muscle memory thing. Like, so some days you'll be in the zone and you're hitting every mark, and other days you're out there.
What was up with that? Absolutely. Why is it that some days you're in the zone and other days you can't hit the side of a barn?
Bro, it's like sometimes for me, the way I feel like it is, some of it's a confidence issue. Like you're already there mentally. You're already there mentally. The time on the water, there's no substitute for time on the water. That's your number one ally out there. But the other part of it, yeah, is kind of being in a good mental place. So the best solution I have for that one is still bring snacks, man. I mentioned that in my video about, taking kids fishing and all that. bring snacks. That's such a big morale boost when you're on the water and things aren't going right. If you got a good snack, you feel a little bit better pretty quickly.
My tip on that is, honestly, I cast far more accurately when I look at where I want to throw it,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think, oh, let me get my backstroke good. Let me release at the right time. Let me make sure my technique is good. No, it's that lure's got to go right there. Forget everything. Just
Yep.
do it.
Now,
Like, don't focus so much on your technique. That's what the practice is for. By the time you get out there, zone all that other stuff out and just say, my lure's got to go there. And sometimes, just for me at least, just putting it there and it goes exactly where I want it.
so that's a really good point. The only caveat that I'll add is, especially for those kayak fishermen out there, if you have rods behind you in the kayak, you're going to have to kind of test it out to get used to your own backswing so that you're not constantly hooking your own rods back there. And there's ways to do that. There's different racks you can put directly behind you instead of off to the side, and that'll help mitigate that to a degree. But I'd be lying if I wasn't, halfway jerking my rods out of the rod holder on a back cast sometimes because I'm not paying attention.
That's the reason why I bring 2 rods.
Yeah.
I don't bring any more than 2 rods on a kayak. Heck, a lot of times I go out my boat and I don't bring 2 rods. I just now put 4 extra rod holders on my boat because I have a friend. He's that guy that brings 6 rods and fishes with one.
I'm that guy. I'm that guy for sure.
Yeah, I got more than one friend that does that, apparently. But getting back to the bait caster point,
Yep.
I don't know why. Maybe you know more because you're surrounded with guys that are, preaching the bait caster part.
Yep.
Bait casters are just more accurate, and I can't tell you why. It's just one of those things where when I get in my zen moment and I'm like, bait's got to go there, it gets there on a bait caster. And sometimes with a spinning rod, it's off for some reason. I don't get it.
So it's like part of it is definitely what you're used to and what you spend the most time using. Like, because I used the spinning reel for probably the first, 35 years, 36 years of my life. Excuse my language, I'm very good with a spinning reel in terms of dropping it into any little pocket or little window that I want to. Honestly, I'm still honing my skills with a bait caster, but the things a bait caster gives you, generally speaking, that's going to be superior to a spinning reel is that once you get used to manipulating the spool tension with your thumb or the other different various settings on your reel, you can really control exactly where that lure is going to stop.
Yeah.
Now, it's something that it's a skill I'm still honing, man. There's no two ways about it, but a bait caster does give you more control to be able to stop it exactly where you want it, all within just that thumb. You just got to get used to it and build that skill.
Yeah. I think, I said I had no idea. I'm going to take a guess as to why I think I can not only control distance with a bait caster, but I can control left to right. The lead guide on the tip of a bait caster is usually really small.
That's true.
And a spinning rod, it's about 2 to 3 times as wide on the tip. And I wonder if it has more room for left and right, whereas a bait caster kind of points it a little bit better. It's just a guess.
That's a really good question. It's a really good point. Yeah, I'm curious about that. We need more field testing. Let's go do some field testing.
Yeah. You're a field tester, man. I'm like, the lure's got to go there. Let's go. We don't have any questions, so let's. We got about 3 minutes. Apparently, nobody wants old school. Our amazing old school tackle. I'm sure you guys want this stuff. It's pretty sweet.
That's an interesting call because I got a box full of it, and that's what I was winning a lot of. These qualifying rounds and other tournaments that I was winning last year. That was on the old school kicker frog, man. That lure is hard to beat, man. Especially on a subsurface bite day. I love bouncing that thing off stumps on a weighted swim bait hook. It's one of my favorite ways to fish. Even though topwater is king, that's one of my favorite ways to fish, brother.
Man, we'll spend another episode talking about maybe convincing me into topwater, but I love topwater blowups. Don't get me wrong. but I catch more fish on subsurface. So when I'm fishing, I'm fishing. I'm trying to catch fish. I'm trying to be catching as well.
Yeah.
We got some questions rolling in now. I guess that little pressure got to him. But yeah, I mean, if I could catch as many fish on top water, I'd fish top water. But I don't think I catch as many fish. What do you think?
Now is the time to turn that standard on its head. Like now, like straight up, now is the time. Like there is never, I really don't think there's a better or more reliable time than kind of like the height of pre-spawn season to nail snakehead on top water. Like in years past, I had a bad trip this weekend, or I had bad weather this weekend. It wasn't a bad trip, bad weather, and then a bunch of mishaps. We still had a good time. But when it comes to this time of year in top water, there's been days out there I've caught, 30 snakehead, 10 or 15 bass, and it's all on top water, man.
You caught 30 snakehead in a day?
All on top water, bro.
I don't think I've caught 30 snakehead in my life.
It's like this time of year when they're feeding up. God, it's a thing of beauty, bro, because it's like they're all turned on. It's like, I put it this way. This is the way I love putting it. Like Orange 22 Fishing. He knows what I'm talking about here. It's as if a snakehead is in every spot in which there should be a snakehead. And it's just such a great kind of dopamine drip reward mechanism is that you nail that spot, boom, fish. You nail the next spot, boom, fish. It's beautiful. It's
But
beautiful.
it ruins you for other times of year.
Say again?
It ruins you for other times of year.
I mean, it kind of does because eventually you're going to go out and snakehead are going to be snakeheading that day, and it's like you either won't see them and you'll swear to God they aren't in the river anymore, or you'll see them and they won't bite anything, because they're voracious killers. They won't bite anything.
Well, we got a handful of questions here, and then we might we're the last show of the night, so we might push all the way to 8:30 because I want to hear the snakehead trip from hell story.
Oh God!
If for nothing else than laughing at you, because I enjoy laughing. It's one of my favorite things to do. Outdoors in Maryland. What's up, Sam? He says, "Do you know how to skip with a baitcaster yet?" See, with Sam, I have to translate his messages. Rarely do they ever make any sense. We love you, Sam. Do you know how to skip with a baitcaster yet?
Not yet. Not well. Nowhere near as well as I can with a spinning rod. And that's still a skill that I'm honing, man. I feel like when you're skipping, and someone more knowledgeable could probably weigh in with this, but I feel like when you're trying to skip, you need kind of a different spool tension than you do when you're just trying to cast. Mm-hmm. And that goes for both the actual settings and the control knobs as well as your thumb. So it's something that I live on the water. I have no excuse. I should go out there and practice more. I should have that locked
down. You and I both have a little pier or place to practice casting within a few hundred feet of our house. So no excuse. There's no excuse why I'm still a terrible caster. Timothy, I think you're kind of new to the show. If you're not, I apologize. But if you are, welcome. He asked, are those swim baits at Edgemere? I'm guessing you know what he's talking about.
That's a great question. I think he's probably talking about the old school that we were just talking about with the kicker throw. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. Which one? These guys?
Yeah, I'm not sure if old school is over Edgemere or not. Rashawn probably knows.
If Rashawn doesn't know, I can reach out to old school and find out.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if they're not, you can hit me up for the link, or I'm sure Grant and them have it too, since they have the lures right there. So
yeah.
But yeah.
Sam says, I'm from Dundalk. We don't know how to be apparently coherent is now a proper noun. It went from being an adjective to a proper noun. Apparently, I like laughing at Sam and Kambotrout, all former Chesapeake Outdoor Sports members.
Yep.
Sean Diggity. I'll ask a question for the heck of it. Well, thank you. What line type would you choose for a topwater bait over a subsurface bait, and why? I think the question for the heck of it might actually win question of the night.
I think so too. So when it comes to line type, I got to be honest that I have been using straight braid forever for snakehead. literally forever, top water and subsurface. However, my good friend Rashawn, has been using, some fluoro leaders here and there, like especially when the bite's tough, when they're a little bit more finicky. So having a fluoro leader, I don't like to do it, but there's days I definitely will do it, and I'll be more prone to use them when I'm fishing more kind of open water that's clear. I feel like that's when it might have the biggest impact on you. Excuse me. But generally speaking, I'm using, the Berkeley X9, Berkeley X5, 40-pound test, either a Palomar knot or I use that Bangkok hooker twist knot. So, I mean,
A what?
a Bangkok hooker twist knot.
This is a family show, bro. You get
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's called.
It's a nice knot, though. It's a nice knot. But I mean, when it comes to abrasion resistance, it's hard to beat that particular knot.
Let's see. We got a question coming in from Colin with Big Yacker Fishing. I have a question. How did Cambo drop his rod in the water last Friday? I guess this is a perfect segue.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Here we go. Fishing Snakehead trip from hell. Cue Cambo, go.
So me and a bunch of my buddies, we had it scheduled for probably well over a month and a half. We had an Airbnb.
Thank you for inviting me, by the way. Awesome.
Yeah, you got it, bro. So we had an Airbnb down on the Eastern Shore, like 5 minutes, from Blackwater. And we're so excited for weeks, just looking forward to it. It's pre-spawn bite. We're about to tear these fish up. 2 days before we get down there, the whole script flips when it comes to the forecast. And we go from having nice 70-degree days with low wind and plenty of sun, which I don't mind early in the season in terms of sunlight, to high wind, rain, and a cold front. We got there on Friday morning, and I got there barely getting there alive because I was up for 48 hours straight. I was literally screaming at myself going across the Bay Bridge because I was dozing off. I'm just trying to stay awake. And again, snacks saved my life. I pulled over, got some snacks, and I made it. But anyway, we get there, right? Starts raining on us. Water temp when we started that day was mid to high 60s. By the time we got off the water, low 50s. It rained on us. It hailed on us. The wind blew almost the entire day. And by the next day, and I'm skipping over key points I'll come back to. By the next day, the water was low 50s, high 40s. That is a recipe for disaster when it comes to snakehead fishing. So, but how did I knock that rod and reel in the water? Well, you've seen my kayak if you watch my videos. I have rod holders that I attach to my H-rails on the Hobie. And shout out to Delaware Paddle Sports. Thanks again for an awesome kayak.
Great guys.
But I had those rod holders there. Or more appropriately, I should have, but I didn't. So instead of putting rods in rod holders, I laid it on the side of my kayak and I was fighting the wind. And as I'm fighting the wind, I knocked that rod into the water. And if you've never knocked anything into the water in Blackwater, you know that you're kind of screwed to some degree because the bottom of Blackwater is somewhere between a foot to about 5 feet of decaying material. Like if anything that goes into that sinks, including you if you try to go into water and get your stuff back. Brother, it's like as soon as it happened, I try to jam my kayak into the ground with my paddle so I'm not going to move. So I stay in the immediate area and get my rod and reel back. The wind's blowing. I can't reach behind me to get my anchor. It took me an hour and a half. I put on a rattle trap and just fan casted once I finally got my anchor. For an hour and a half, I fan cast. And then hauling up sticks and branches and rocks and all kinds of crap. And finally, at the very end, I pull it up. It wasn't even hooked on the rattle trap. It was resting on the top of the rattle trap. And I was able to snatch it back. And then later that day, just casting, I break my Corrado. The one snakehead I caught, I put it on a stringer. I brushed up against a brush pile. The snakehead came off the stringer. Like it was a tale of woe, brother. Like it's like one thing after another.
Bait caster, the Corrado is a type of bait caster.
Yep.
Fell apart?
It didn't fall apart. I don't know if the bearings went out of alignment, but it went from a nice smooth. That's the thing about a Corrado. Corrados are very smooth reels. It went from a smooth sound to a grinding sound every time I was casting. So
Did you
I
dunk
put
it?
it.
Had you dunked that reel that day?
No, that was the SLX DC that I dropped in the water, and that thing was still kicking just fine. Like nothing made sense that day. Nothing went right that day. All I can say is that between our buddies down there, we landed enough fish for some excellent snakehead tacos, and we had a great time just kind of shooting the crap and joking around and laughing off the day when we got back to the house. So it ended well, bro. But y'all will see in the video come Friday, the snakehead trip from hell. You'll see it on there, man.
Well, man, check out Kambotrout's channel. It is among my favorites, if not my favorite. Informational, educational, humorous. I love when his wife comes on there and makes fun of him and his hobby. Humiliates you so I can laugh at you. But I think that's an important story to tell because a lot of people look up to you as a snakehead angler, and I think it's important for people to see like it's not always like it is on that YouTube channel where you're catching
Nah.
multiple fish making these awesome casts. Even guys that have been doing it for a long time can have a really bad day.
We all have bad days. We all have skunks. It happens to everybody, man. Do not get discouraged. Keep it in the water.
Got to keep going. Got to keep going. Well, thanks so much. He is human, says Colin. Yeah, I mean, don't pump his ego up that much.
No, keep going.
We had a couple of questions for this evening. Did you want to land on a question of the night for the old school Fatty Houdini paddle tail?
That's going to be Mr. Question for the heck of it, Mr. Sean Diggity.
Yeah, I thought so too. That's a great one.
Yep.
Sean Diggity, send your address to admin at the fish, and I'll put it in now. Admin at thefishingchannel.net, and I will get your prize sent out to you in the next couple of days. And you can get to fishing with those awesome old school baits, guys. Brian Dolph down at Old School is a fantastic dude. Old School is a Maryland company. He makes them, right there in his shop. Awesome product. Support local. Can't recommend it enough. I use these things all the time. So, Sean, you enjoy those. We got a bunch of comments. Oh, okay. All right. They were my comments. I put them in. I use them all the time. It's great bait, and it's also supporting local business. Let me go back and close that question out. Speaking of close out, Cambo, close us out.
Yeah, so if you're going to be in the area, this weekend I'm actually giving a seminar and sitting on an invasive species panel at the Bay Bridge Boat Show on Saturday. So, check out, I think I have it listed on my page, but you can check out the Bay Bridge Boat Show as well. I think we have a cleanup coming up as well. And I say we, meaning actually in this case, the Back River Restoration Committee. And definitely check that out on Facebook. They put on a cleanup like freaking pros, man. Like they have all the equipment, they have all the donuts, all the coffee, anything you could possibly want. They bring trash grabbers, they bring all the equipment. All you got to do is come out, be ready to work to help restore some of our local waters, some of our local areas to a cleaner state. So check out Back River Restoration Committee as well.
And where was that again? Where's the cleanup going to be?
I believe, don't quote me, I believe it's going to be I think it's at Cox Point Park. It's very nearby in Essex, but just check them out. They'll have the event on Facebook. Back River Restoration Committee is for the cleanup, and I'll be at the Bay Bridge Boat Show for the seminar on snakehead fishing, followed by the invasive species panel. Got to check those two things out. That's good stuff. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for your questions. We really appreciate your support. And Cambo, of course, thanks so much for continuing to do this report with us. It was a lot of fun. Hey, thanks, y'all.